next. All right, we're going to shift our focus to the NFC playoff race. We had our first playoff bid secured. Congratulations to my Philadelphia Eagles for securing a playoff berth. They have not clinched the division. They have not clinched a particular seed. They're 12-1. And by the way, that loss is kind of like looming, like, oh, that was actually a good loss. Like it's better to have that loss than to be undefeated right now. You know what I mean? Like one of those weird
young team. You don't want to deal with that nonsense. I have to answer those questions every week.
I mean, look, I guess by virtue of the nature of this podcast, well, actually, no, we'll circle back on Philadelphia for you, Billy. They truck stick New York. We don't need to spend any time on that. We'll bring you on in a second. Instead, Wilson, as I teased before the break, your Detroit Lions, the Lions are America's team now. Winners of 5 of 6 straight. Dan PC Principal, aka Dan the Man Campbell, aka PC Principal. If you haven't watched South Park, if you know, you know. And the Lions, Jared Goff, who's playing just some freaking fantastic football right now. I tip my cap to you, Wilson. I think you've been honking that horn for a while, and Goff is playing great. 27-39, 330, and 3 touchdowns. Beat the division leading Vikings 34-23. They're still 4 games back of the Vikings, so that ain't happening. But their playoff odds after the various outcomes, including a loss by the Seahawks and another important NFC loss that's escaping my brain right now for sure. Oh, the Giants losing to the Eagles, jumped up to 22% from 8% coming in. Are the Lions a playoff team?
Yeah, absolutely. This team was 0-9-1 to start last year, Breech. 0-9-1. And what did they do the first half of this season? They scored a bunch of points, and then their defense collapsed in the final 15 minutes. Every single freaking week. They suddenly figured out how to play a little defense. They're getting after the quarterback. And I don't even think this game exposed the Vikings. The Vikings have been the same team they were last year. They've just been extremely lucky. And I know people get mad when we say that, but that's the truth. So Vikings fans, don't feel bad that you lost to the Lions. Lions are a good football team. And, a lot of things to like about this. Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Shark had a great touchdown catch. Jameson Williams takes off the cast and just scores a touchdown on his very first catch of the season.
That's a big ad this late in the season, man. That's like that's, we spent all this time talking about Odell Beckham. Like we should have been talking about Jameson Williams coming back for the Lions. That's a much, much bigger deal. No offense to Odell.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Once at the beginning of his career and only has 1 ACL, the other one obviously has 2, and it's unsure as a 30-year-old what he has left. But I think the Lions are very much in the conversation. They've drafted extremely well. I mean, the Jameson Williams play was great. Dan Campbell is not afraid to go from 4th down, and I mentioned that and thinking about the Penei Sewell in motion. I think he caught a 3rd and 7 pass. One of the most athletic offensive tackles in the league, looked like an oversized tight end, and got the first down late in the game to keep things going there. So
144 more, and he catches Jamar Chase.
Ouch. One other thing I want to mention quickly, and I don't think we'll talk about this game, but when I was watching the Texans try to beat the Cowboys, it's always funny to me when teams are out of it and their coaches who have been conservative forever just start doing whatever on 4th down. That's how Dan Campbell plays all the time. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And he actually, earlier this week, bemoaned the fact that he didn't go for a 4th down early this year that cost him the football game. And that's how you have to think about things. You can't change the way you coach because you're losing 58-0 or you're 1-8. And I think Campbell deserved a lot of credit for coaching the exact same way each and every week, getting these guys to buy in. And, the Vikings are who we thought they were. They're a good football team. They're not a 10-win team. They are on paper, but they probably should be closer to 500. Like they could be 7-6 right now, and the Lions could be 6-7, and we'd say, oh, yeah, that sounds about right for both teams.
Dan Campbell called a fake punt on 4th and 8 from his own 26-yard line. If that's not the biggest man Campbell call of the week.
And it went for like 20-something yards.
No, it went for 42 yards.
Twice as much.
Literally, it flipped the game because they got it and got a touchdown on the drive. And instead of being up 14-7, they're up 21-7. When you look at, I know people will be like, well, the Lions are 6-7. Obviously, they have looked much, much better over the past few weeks. But they've also played the most difficult schedule in the NFL this year as far as other teams' winning percentage. They're the only team in the NFL that has all their opponents combined above a 600 winning percentage. And yet they've still managed to muster together a 6-7 record. So this team is good. They're getting better every week. And Wilson, I don't think you're crazy for thinking that they might get in the playoffs. They could go 4-0 down the stretch. I think they go at least 3-1, and that gets them to 9-8, which gives them a chance.
This is the first.
Become best friends. Yep.
Yeah, this is the first time in a long time where you feel like the Lions.
I love that I pointed out the Lions were going to make the playoffs like 3 weeks ago, but it's fine.
You said that about every team, though. So, obviously you can go back and point to it.
You're the little boy who cried wolf.
So the Lions have scored 25 points for the 5th straight game. The last time this happened, 1954. Pete Prisco was in 2nd grade. Meanwhile, the Vikings.
Actually, that might be wrong.
The Vikings. That's 100% wrong. The Vikings, this is the 5th straight game of allowing 400+ yards of offense. So we can talk about the Lions not showing up in the 4th quarter defensively. They've started to do that. The Vikings have a lot of stuff to figure out.
This game was like threatening not to go over. Shout out to KJ Osborne and Kirk Cousins for forcing the issue and making sure that it went over that total. Like, Justin Jefferson, 223 receiving yards. Kirk Cousins, 425, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. I still think the Vikings are a very good team. I just think the Vikings are like, oh my God. And again, I don't want to turn this into like I like the Vikings. I really like all the pieces.
Turn into it every week, Brinson. Just do it.
I know. It's just
Anti-Vikings podcast. I know where you're going with this.
We're actually
Who's
sponsored.
our resident Vikings fan that's just gonna get mad at you?
We're sponsored by Big Cheese. And they're paying us to talk bad about the Packers.
That's not a bad hot take from Michael there.
Dan Campbell's a milder version of
Brandon Staley.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'd call Dan Campbell mild, but yes,
in terms of his play calling, yeah.
I mean, I just think Dan Campbell has. Here's the thing about the Lions. Not to move away from the Vikings, but the thing about the Lions, and look, the Vikings are 10-3. They're in the playoffs. They're going to win the division. They're in great shape. What happens in there remains to be seen. The Lions have taken on, like, Dan Campbell to me came into the Lions and said, here's who I'm going to be and what I'm going to do. And there's been not a shred of dishonesty about what he's done and how he's acted. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. He, is very much an inspirational coach, but also somebody who I think is wisely aggressive in games, particularly knowing that at times his defense hasn't been very good, although it's been better the last few weeks. That, they built for the trenches. They have some beast on the offensive line is just like a wall, man. And, there were reports coming into this game that Jared got multiple reports. So, it either came from Goff's camp or the Lions camp that Goff's their guy, not a bridge quarterback. And then Goff responds by putting up this monster performance and slinging it around all these different receivers. So, I really want them to make the playoffs. Like, I really want Dan Campbell coaching in a wild card game. Like, what's the matchup we want
against the Vikings?
That's pretty easy to happen, right?
That would be juicy.
I don't want Dan Campbell. I don't want the Lions playing the Niners. That feels like a bad situation for the Lions.
Why?
Well, if they get in, they're either getting the 6 or 7 because they're not going to catch the Cowboys, which means they're either playing the Vikings or 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, Brock Purdy and perhaps no Deebo Samuel, they're worse teams to play.
No, you would much rather get don't you think you'd rather get the Vikings than the Niners?
Yeah, but you don't just.
No. They would sign up for any matchup right now. It's interesting too. We talk about these sort of how the path and all this, but like the Niners are at the Seahawks on Thursday this week, right? So San Francisco is what we say, Breech, were they favored by 3.5 or something like that, and it's climbing.
Yeah, Seahawks.
This is just if chalk holds discussion that I'm trying to set up here. You have the Commanders, I called them the real name, and the Giants playing each other. So the Commanders are favored at home. So let's give them the win. The Lions are at the Jets. It's a pick 'em. For the purposes of us trying to talk about the Lions' playoff hopes, we're going to give them the win. And is there anybody else germane to the discussion of the NFC? I don't think so. So week 16, Lions at the Panthers. I don't think that's a guaranteed win, but we're going to give it to them again for the purpose of the discussion. Commanders at the Niners. We're going to give the Niners a win. That's chalk. That's easy. And the Giants at the Vikings. I think it's fair to give the Vikings a W there in week 16. At this point, the Commanders, so that's 2 weeks, like reasonable outcomes for the next 2 weeks. The Commanders are 8-6-1. The Giants are 7-7-1, and the Vikings are 8-7, and they're the 7th seed with a chance to climb even higher.
The Lions.
So the Lions, yeah, not the Vikings, my bad. And they would be matched up against the 2 seed there in the Vikings. So really, really interesting. And then, of course, you would have, if they stumble on the road, it wouldn't be crazy in one of those 2 games and go 1-1. I think that you expect them to beat the Bears at home, but again, not a guarantee. I mean, what if they go to Green Bay against it's like Rodgers with nothing on the line, and
then it'll be Jordan Love.
Yeah,
they could be playing Jordan.
I don't know.
Love.
Rodgers might force you to be like, listen, I'm knocking these guys out of the playoffs. Like I'm not sitting at home while I watch Dan Campbell and Jared Goff play in the playoffs.
I tell you, man, you don't want that Jared Goff smoke. You can say that.
No, that's how Rodgers would feel.
I know. I'm saying to Rodgers, you don't want to go out like that. You don't want your last game to be a Jared Goff ass whooping. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Tampa 6-7, 4 seed. Panthers are live as hell in the NFC South suddenly again.
The Panthers
that entire division is nutso.
The Panthers went out. They're winning the division.
They are the only team in that division that controls their own fate.
Do you guys want to take a time machine back to the Buccaneers Saints game and revisit that conversation? Where are we on Tom Brady? Let me ask you, where are we on Tom Brady and the Buccaneers? That's why
they got absolutely truck sticked by the 49ers. Truck stick. The Niners are a really good team.
Oh, my question is this. Are you still of the opinion, both of you, that you don't want to give Tom Brady a chance to go to the playoffs?
I'm not going to write off the greatest athlete in the history of sports.
They wrote off Geno.
All right.
Geno didn't write back.
Let me ask you this. Let's frame it like this, Wilson. You're the Cowboys. You almost have that 5 seed locked up because you're probably not going to catch the Eagles, and the teams below you probably aren't going to catch you. Would you rather face Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, Desmond Ridder and the Atlanta Falcons,
wait, what?
Sam Darnold and the Carolina Panthers, or Andrew Gregory Dalton and the New Orleans Saints?
Oh, I see. Because all these teams are wide open in the NFC South.
One of those teams will get the 4 seed, and if you're the Cowboys, I would say the Brady is the one you would least want to face.
Okay, fair enough. But that's like being, that's like you going into a room full of Tylers and saying you're the tallest person in that room. Yeah, you are.
And I would brag about it for a month.
Look, I'm not, again, this is not me saying that anything the Buccaneers have done over the course of the season and the 13 games they played leads me to believe that they would be a dangerous threat to anyone in the postseason.
Brinson, let me rephrase Breech's question to you. If you're the Dallas Cowboys, would you rather face Tampa, San Francisco, or Minnesota?
Well, I mean, Tampa's the answer.
Right. So,
yeah.
I mean,
no. Look, they're the worst team. They're going to be the worst team in the playoffs because they're barely going to be above 500. I'm just saying that it's Tom Brady.
I know.
And he's made weirder stuff happen. 28-3 is weirder than like running the table in the NFC.
Shout out to Shanahan for not letting it get to 28-3 today. I think it got to 31-0 or something, or
on purpose. He
35-0 or whatever it was.
He took a safety on purpose.
He's not testing football guys.
74% for the Bucs to make the playoffs, obviously through the division. Panthers now up to 21%. I mean, it's not unreasonable that we have the Panthers and the Lions suddenly in the playoffs this postseason.
You often say a lot of things that are filled with hyperbole. You are not wrong about this. I can't call you out on this. And quickly, I just want to who's going to give a shout out to? Oh, I want to give a shout out to Christian McCaffrey because I doubted that trade because of the cost of it. That worked out. And a shout out to the Panthers for still being able to run the ball, getting all the draft capital, and leading on the run. Take a hint, Mike McDaniels today on their way to victory.
Yep. I mean, it's not inconceivable that we could have Philly, Minnesota, San Francisco, Carolina, Dallas, Seattle, Detroit. Like that is an entirely different playoff picture than what we had, several weeks ago, or even 2 weeks ago when we thought this would be a boring NFC playoff race.
Well, and the NFC South alone, real quick on that division, Carolina has the easiest remaining schedule of those 4 teams. They do not face any team over the final 4 weeks that currently has a winning record. Whereas Tampa Bay has to play the Bengals. Falcons still have to play the Ravens. And I don't think any of us think the Saints are going to come back with just 4 wins, but they still could win out maybe and get to 8-9. They play the Eagles though. So everybody has a tough game left except for the Panthers.
Imagine traveling back in time to August 2022. And we're doing this podcast and you look at me and you say, give me the craziest, most insane, unbelievable take about the 2022 season. And I say the week 15 Lions at Jets game in Week 16 Lions at Panthers game will determine the fate of the NFL playoff universe.
I think we were on the Lions.
You have me locked up.
The Jets, absolutely, but I think we were sort of on the Lions this offseason. I think we thought that they would be
I'm just saying Lions at Jets, Lions at Panthers, not looking like.
But the Jets is a different story. We thought, at least I did, I thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL.
I'm just saying that those two games were not on my radar as
no, that's fair.
massively important games. Okay.